Welcome back to Dave's Gone By on AM 1240 WGBB Freeport and live streaming on the web at AM1240WGBB.com. Time for a segment called Dave's Gone Cultural, where we look at the arts, and usually it's about theater. Sometimes we do music and movies and books, but generally I return to my love, which is the theater, and I've got someone talking to me today, a very well-respected and very, very busy theater critic and writer. His name is Andy Propst, and you can find his work on his own website, AmericanTheaterWeb.com, as well as Backstage. He writes for them, and you're going to be hearing him even more than he is now on satellite radio, and we'll hear a lot about that from him. So please welcome to Dave's Gone Cultural, Andy Propst. Hey, Andy.
Hey, Dave.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
No, wait a minute. No, you are not good. Tell everybody what's going on with you.
Well, we're in the middle of Fringe. I'm reviewing 50 of the Fringe shows right now.
Oh, actually, I meant your apartment, but...
oh, the apartment. Electrical fire in the apartment above mine, and we're working through with Con Edison the whole 9 yards. We've got a wire that needs to be run from my place down to the basement. It's a joy to not have electricity in the middle of August.
For days. It's going to be like for 4 or 5 days you're not going to have electricity.
Right.
Fun. But you're not going to be home that much because you're going to be, as you said...
At the Fringe.
The Fringe Festival. Now, how many shows are you going to see?
I'm going to see about 50 of them. 200.
Oh. Is that what you did last year or the year before, or is this year...
That has been my average for, I guess, about 2-3 years now.
Well, going by the last couple of years then, what's the percentage, would you say, of shows that were really worth seeing, some that were just passable, and some were like, why did I even bother to go?
I think that from where I stand, there are only about 10 to 15% of what I see, why did I bother to go? I'd have to say that the vast majority are passable, where there are glimmers here and there, that there's some talent, either the writing or a performer that I've never gotten to see, that I just go, wow, I'm really glad I was here. And then 10% are just like, wow, this is what it's all about. This is why I go to the theater.
Which were the 10% of those last year? Do you remember some titles?
I quite liked a show coming out of Chicago called Pinafore. It was an updating using the Gilbert and Sullivan music and a good deal of their lyrics.
Cool.
But it looked at the Navy's don't ask, don't tell policy toward gays, and it was very, very funny. I also quite liked a little musical that was produced by The Inverse, and it was a little fairy tale thing, and the name a year later is escaping me.
And which ones are you looking for most this time?
This time around, I have to say that I'm looking forward toward a couple of the shows that are more highly political. There's one called The Passion of George W., which is a musical, and some of the materials are saying that it's kind of what a musical might be about the country in which we live if Michael Moore to have written it.
Okay.
There's a musical that in Britain they're saying it has been banned because the folk there consider it seditious. It's called Diana.
I mean, it's about Lady Di.
And about Lady Di.
Her being dead. Lady Dead, yeah.
And one last musical, and there are obviously a lot of plays in here too, but this year I'm leaning towards some of the musicals. There's something called All Good Things, which is about a 60s rock group called The Remains, and they actually fronted for the Beatles.
Wow.
And rumor has it that at a couple of the performances, some of those band members are actually going to be performing with the cast. And so if for nothing else, in terms of seeing some folk on stages that I might not otherwise, that I'm quite much looking forward to.
You'll be seeing All That Remains.
All That Remains.
All that. Sorry about that. Okay, let's talk Broadway. So since we did our off-Broadway thing, which you haven't even seen yet, there's a few Broadway things that you have checked up on, including the revival of Arthur Miller's After the Fall, being done at the Roundabout with Peter Krause, Carla Gugino. She's playing the sort of Marilyn Monroe-ish character, Vivian Benesh, Jessica Hecht. What did you think?
It's a very, very problematic production of it. as you said, the Carla Gugino character is based on one of Arthur Miller's wives, Marilyn Monroe. And when the play opened in the early 60s, everyone focused on how autobiographical this piece is. And in his stage directions, he's quite specific that the landscape of the set is supposed to be abstracted and that it is taking place inside the character who stands in for Miller, Quentin, whom Peter Krause is playing.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Mayer, the director, has staged this on a very, very realistic recreation of the TWA terminal out at Kennedy. And as such, it grounds Krause's performance so that as these characters ebb and flow and the character worries about how he treated his first wife, who's played by Jessica Hecht, as he thinks about his marriage to this self-destructive, alcoholic, pill-popping singer-turned-actress.
Courtney Love. Oh, no, sorry.
And contemplates a third, and then also worries about how he handled himself in front of the House Un-American Committee. All of these events, we move back and forth in time. Certain scenes overlap one another, and to have this in this very realistic environment is quite distracting, and I think it grounded Krause's performance to the point that it's blandness.
Yeah, I think a lot of the critics really agree, and I too. I think he's obviously a good actor, but something isn't quite clicking with him in this role. He just sort of seems to go through it semi-believably, but not intensely.
It's not an intense experience at all. Unfortunate to say that the play does heat up when Gugino comes in, and the audience watches her as she, drinks and becomes more famous and drinks because she's famous and tries to have him hold her in control. It's very painful to watch. But there are fireworks on the stage because of this woman who is making quite the Broadway debut, I think.
Well, have you ever seen another production of After the Fall that was more spatially diffuse than being set clunk in an airport?
I have seen it in a more abstracted environment. It was a college production, so it's comparing apples and oranges. It was easier, I thought, for the audience and for the actor playing Quentin to not be distracted by why are these people all here.
But I do assume that once that character, Maggie, comes on, even in a different production, the whole thing's going to just boost to another level because of the character.
It did boost to another level, but before that, as you watch Quentin wrestle with his first wife, who accuses him of not being there, not being available emotionally, those scenes crackled. And here I could feel half of the scene crackling because of Hecht's haunting performance.
Right. And yeah, I think in that case you're also right about the locale. It feels very sort of antiseptic and open and not intimate in any way. Let's move on to another show that opened recently. A musical. An old musical, also, from 1974, Stephen Sondheim and Bert Shevelov, by way of Nathan Lane, recently, The Frogs at Lincoln Center. Your thoughts?
I had a lot more fun than I expected to.
Now, let's qualify that as far as a critic going in with expectations. Why did you have expectations, and what were they?
Well, as a critic, I'd gone in as second-night press. And as such, much like a juror walking into a trial, I do not read reviews before I go in if I'm going into review, but it's impossible to not have some sense of the buzz within the theater community and within the community of theater critics.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had gleaned that their experiences had not been entirely satisfactory for them.
Okay.
That being said, I'd not read specifics, so I walked in thinking, okay, let's see what we have, and found myself pleasantly surprised.
All the way through?
For the most part, yes.
I realize that's a loaded question, and we'll get to why, but yeah, I mean, from...
For the most part, I know what you're leading toward. Do you want to do a plot synopsis, or should I for the listeners?
Well, why don't you go for it? You're the guest.
All right. The Frogs is based on a play by Aristophanes, and it was written at a time when Greece was at war, and had been at war for quite some time, and looks at Dionysus, the god of drama and wine, who's seeing this war, and he's seeing that the world is going nowhere fast, and he decides that the only thing that might save the world is if he brings back a playwright from Hades. Dionysus and his servants begin their descent to Hades. Along the way they visit his half-brother Heracles, they see Pluto, and in the original there is a debate between Aeschylus and Euripides. In this new play there is a debate between Shaw and Shakespeare, and then one of these playwrights returns to Earth in the hopes that he will write plays that will make the audience wake up out of their complacency. Representing the complacency of the audience are this group of frogs who live in the river Styx that he encounters on his way to Hades. And it's that debate which I had heard might sap some of the comic energy that Nathan Lane and his conspirator, Roger Bart, who plays the servant, bring to the table in this new production.
But you found that even through that debate, which I also agree, having read the reviews, having heard the buzz about it, that there was a whole half hour of the second act that was something of a downer and brought everything kind of flat and was interesting to a point, but way too long. And then I sat through and I was like, they were doing everything in their power to make the debate quick and, you know, with a few one-liners and interesting, and it moved fairly quickly. Even so, I do have my reservations about the whole sequence. But you were okay with it?
I think that the sequence could be trimmed by 5 minutes. For someone who sees as much as I do, I'm very aware when I feel that my time is being wasted. I felt that both the actor playing Shakespeare and the actor playing Shaw, whom audiences will know from television, it's
Daniel Davis
from TV's The Nanny, handled the actual quotes that are thrown in there pretty well, and they were very pointed as these two playwrights debate women, or it's not even debate, it's how do they handle these subjects. And anecdotally, my guest that evening was a friend who is much more of a Mets fan than a theater fan. He leaned forward and afterwards looked at me and said, okay, well, I think Shaw won. They made the wrong choice. And I thought the fact that he had been engaged by it and listened to each side of it, a good indication that if you're willing to give yourself over to it,
then you would go with it. Yeah.
It's not a didactic lesson plan. Maybe a little shaving here and there just to bring it all in tune. I have more problems with the overall production than that sequence.
The production meaning?
I think that Susan Stroman, who brought us the producers, it's not her best work.
Well, I have to agree, especially the end of the first act when the frogs finally come on. The costumes are great, but that production number was, I thought, pretty annoying.
It was pretty annoying. I thought that everything, all of her dances looked generic.
Yeah.
I could see recycled bits from other pieces that she staged. I thought that she got most creative. There were moments in which the dancers' bodies looked as if they were from the sides of Grecian pottery. And that, I thought, was quite beautiful and quite inventive. And I thought that the circus-like atmosphere that pervaded the visuals felt vaguely inappropriate. And one moment in the dance for the frogs in particular where they have to get Nathan Lane into a bungee suit.
Right.
I could feel that the dancers were working to mask getting him into this.
And there's also, I think, a scene where he's supposed to be leaping up to the balcony and going towards his late wife. And, it seems not to be him. I think they do a switcheroo at that
They do a switcheroo.
It just didn't work for me at all.
It did not.
Yeah. The thing about the show for me, though, is that it has no real forward go. It feels like an ambling, picaresque, slow-moving adventure with, admittedly, lots and lots of laughs. But you can feel it's sort of like that turntable that goes around and around. It's grinding forward without any real urgency, even when they go to find the playwright and there is something of a plot. And for me, that's what really kind of keeps the show in second gear. And also, I don't think much of the Sondheim work was really, really special. It became about his lyrics, which were so relentlessly clever and based on end rhyme that after a while, I even got a little tired of them. I wanted something a little more, I could have dealt with without so many witty rhymes and a little more pleasant music. I don't know if you feel that way.
I have read the reviews now, and I'll borrow from another critic. I believe it was John Simon who said that the tunes sound second drawer. Most composers would kill to have something from Sondheim's second drawer. For me as a listener, I know that a good chunk of it, particularly the new pieces, because there are 6 from the production, which was mounted in a swimming pool in 74. Mm-hmm. And 6 that had been written especially for this new adaptation by Lane. I thought that, interestingly enough, knowing the original, there is a song for Lane and his slave when they're traveling down to Hades. Mm-hmm. That is integrated with an old bit of music which is very staccato. And the new bit of music sounds more as if it's a 1930s, 1940s patter song. And the blend of those two I thought he'd handled very nicely. I also liked the dual edge that he gave to the song which Pluto sings when the Nathan Lane character, Dionysus, arrives in Hades. Because Pluto is singing about how grand everything is in this afterworld. And it's a very Las Vegas-y show number, both in terms of the music, which isn't great.
Right. And I was a little disappointed in Peter Bartlett in his handling of that song. It was very funny otherwise, but I don't think he was really on top of it as a showman would be. I
think that the problem is that song has a terribly difficult double edge, because I was listening to the lyrics, one of which is something to the effect of, when you're dead, you no longer fear living.
Right.
And if you think, I haven't gone back and done the research, I don't think that Sondheim has ever written a gay character. And I don't believe that he is unaware of the fact that he will be 75 next year. I wondered how much of that song was about him looking at his own mortality. I found the lyrics very dark, set against the glitz of this Las Vegas show number. And I don't know how much Bartlett could handle that and how much time they had in rehearsal to delve through the intricacies of what that song may or may not be about for both the character and just overall.
Yeah, I don't even see it necessarily needing that darkness. Because it's a very satirical song. I mean, here it is. You can take it at face value. Things are great when you're dead because you don't have to worry about all those things you did when you were alive. Even on that basic level, if you even kept it there, I thought he was just like sort of a beat behind a lot of the time.
I think he was, but I think that he's a bright enough performer that he knew that there was something else there and not sure what to do with it.
But all in all, I think we both agree that The Frogs is worth seeing and of value more than just as a Sondheim relic, right?
Oh, I think that audiences will go and have a terrific time. We'll both agree, I believe, that Nathan Lane knows how to sell all of the show's humor, which ranges from old dumb vaudeville punchlines to contemporary satiric against George Bush.
Right. I mean, what was your favorite line from that?
They describe one of the frogs as a bush belly whacker, a frog which makes preemptive strikes and then forgets why it did it. And Roger Bart, who was a last-minute replacement and playing Dionysus' slave.
He's terrific.
Equally a delight, and some listeners may have seen him. He was one of the replacements for Matthew Broderick in The Producers. And I think that the chemistry between the two is quite lovely.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I mean, for all my quibbles about the show, there are, I think, a lot of laughs, and certainly listening, as you said, to Second Level Sondheim, or as John Simon said, there are worse things to do than that.
Yes.
Well, speaking of worse things to do than that, let's talk about one other show that is off-Broadway and stars one of the great legends of film, of basically the last century. Mickey Rooney, little diminutive fellow who has had a career that lasted, about 80 years. And he's running that career down, quite literally, unfortunately, in his current show called Let's Put On a Show with his wife, Jan Chamberlain. And, Andy, your thoughts about Let's Put On a Show?
It made me very sad. I have great respect for the body of work that Rooney's created, over the years, from that first film that I think of him ever doing, Midsummer Night's Dream, through to something like Bill back in the 80s. He's built something that has a half for him that he can do biographical material and some songs that he's written himself. He doesn't have a voice to sing. When he's sitting there and talking about his life, which he doesn't do enough of, I found him absolutely charming. The sadness began the moment he walked out on stage for me, and his tuxedo jacket was buttoned.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, all right, fine, his wife's in this. She's going to come out. They'll fix and we'll see how much in love they are, and it will be cute and charming. And what we think about him as needing the stronger woman beside him, a.k.a. someone like Judy Garland from those films, to kind of brush him up, it didn't happen.
Right, he stayed with that suit, and then in the second act you had the wardrobe malfunction.
The wardrobe malfunction, there's a microphone in his bow tie, and that started to slip. He began to panic, and my heart broke. And that just is so unfortunate. And I'm hopeful that when reviews have appeared, that everyone will take into consideration this man's body of work and be kind, and we can all just recommend that perhaps he needs to rethink this or maybe move on to something else.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to be so kind because he's 83. He's not 103. I mean, there are a lot of very spry and together 83-year-olds who, he was using a monitor to read basically all his stuff.
Teleprompter.
But even so, he was stiff and slow reading a teleprompter and had no real clue. And granted, the Irish Repertory Theatre, where this is taking place, is a very weird place to play because it's got two sides of an audience.
Separated by a pillar.
Yeah, exactly. So you turn to one place and then you've sort of got to turn to the other. And that's not the easiest thing to navigate, but he did it so stiffly that it didn't seem like they bothered to really rehearse the space or rehearse the show, which, ironically, they've been doing in various forms since 1995. And let me also add that for the show itself, as you say, the charming parts are when he's telling about his life or telling some jokes, which is great, which is fine, and he still has that charisma to capture an audience, even if his voice is gravelly. That's okay. And he can sing a little bit, and I like the way he played the piano on one tune. But there was nothing you learned in the show, not a thing that you did not read in the stage bill going in. His entire life is right there, and he doesn't...
the printed page. I think that the reason for my empathy for the man is not so much about his age as my intuition that he's doing this for the other half of the event, which is his wife. And I had this strong sense that she had strong-armed him into doing this so that she could perform some of her Patsy Cline bits. And so I'm just thinking, all right, fine. He's doing this because it makes sure that everything is perhaps he will, like, stop doing nice things for the wife.
Well, I mean, she is not on stage for the whole first act. I mean, it's not as if it's the Jan and Mickey show. So that's what people are getting, a full 2 hours of Mickey almost.
A full dose of him, and him not at his best.
So
I got the feeling that he would just as soon not be doing it at all.
Maybe that would not have been also the case 3 years ago. Maybe he has gotten a little older and weaker. So, of the 3 shows that we've talked about, I guess we both agree that The Frogs is the one you should most likely see. After the Fall, worth a look, do you think, or read the play?
I think read the play. You'd have to, I think, in my opinion, be a very, very serious theater lover to go and enjoy the finer details of the smaller moments. That Peter Krause is on stage for 2 hours and 45 minutes nonstop. It's pretty insurmountable in terms of just an enjoyable evening of theater, I think.
Okay, I sort of disagree. I thought there was enough in there, and especially distancing it from Miller's autobiography, which we can now. And I think there's a lot about relationships and marriage that is on stage and that is entertaining, that maybe, yes, it's a little long and not what the production could be, but I do think it's worth a look. However, the Mickey Rooney, let's put on a show, let's not.
Let's not.
But let us all go to AmericanTheaterWeb.com, and that's theater with an E-R, right?
That's right.
AmericanTheaterWeb.com. Tell people what that is.
American Theater Web. It's entering its 6th year. What you'll find there are links to roughly 6,000 theater websites, theater producing or presenting organizations around the country, their productions. It's a database that's fully searchable, so that if you want to find Sondheim in California in June, you can. You'll find my original reviews and features, along with transcripts of the Broadway and Beyond pieces I do every day on XM Satellite Radio.
Please tell us a little more about that.
XM Satellite Radio is one of the 2 satellite radio channels or services that are available in this country right now. Mm-hmm. They have a station that is 24/7 Broadway show tunes. And in addition, there are interviews that are done by the station's program director, John Von Soosten, and I have a daily piece called Broadway and Beyond, in which I offer reviews as well as news about theater happening both in the city and across the country.
Great.
And those transcripts appear every day on HEW. We're beginning to talk about some more long-term projects that I can have with the station and the company, and in particular looking at emerging writers and music forces in the music theater. And then on HEW, audiences or viewers can find not only my original, but they will find a digest of news from 55 papers that is clipped daily by hand. So it is probably, I think, the best snapshot of what is happening in theater around the country that one can find online right now.
Well, you heard it from the man who publishes it, Andy Propst, and AmericanTheaterWeb.com, and also listen for his stuff on XM Satellite Radio. And thanks for listening to him today on my show, on Dave's Gone By. I want to thank Andy. I hope you get your electricity back.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. I really enjoyed being here.
Thank you, man.